What if the path to immortality wasn't a secret, but a journey? A journey so powerful it could unite millions and bring an empire to its knees. And it all started with a legendary battle between gods and demons for a single drop of nectar, the churning of eternity. Our story begins in the timeless realm of Hindu mythology, with a cosmic tug-of-war of unimaginable scale, the Samudra Manthana, the churning of the ocean of milk. The Devas, or gods, had lost their strength, like a battery drained of its power, and the Asuras, the demons, were on the verge of dominating the universe. To get that power back, they struck a temporary and totally treacherous alliance. Their goal? To churn the primordial ocean and produce Amrita, the divine nectar of immortality. Using a great mountain as the churning rod and the serpent king Vasuki as the rope, gods and demons pulled back and forth for what seemed like an eternity. The ocean yielded incredible treasures, but also a deadly poison that threatened to destroy all creation, like a catastrophic chemical leak. Lord Shiva consumed this poison to save the world. Finally, a divine physician emerged, holding a pot, a kumbh, that contained the precious Amrita. Of course, the truce immediately shattered. The Asuras grabbed the pot, and a furious battle erupted across the heavens. As the gods fought to reclaim the nectar, Lord Vishnu took the form of the enchantress Mohini to distract the demons. In the chaos that followed, 4 precious drops of the immortal nectar fell from the sky. These drops were like spiritual seeds, landing on earth at 4 sacred sites: Prayagraj, Haridwar, Ujjain, and Nashik, consecrating the ground forever. It was said that bathing in the rivers there, at just the right astrological time, could wash away a lifetime of sins, like hitting a spiritual reset button for the soul. A legend was born, but no one could have predicted that this story would give rise to a physical gathering so colossal. It would challenge the very definition of power. The first footsteps. The myth gave birth to the ritual. For centuries, long before the name Kumbh Mela was widely known, pilgrims flocked to these sacred riverbanks. Hindu manuscripts from the 4th and 5th centuries mention large bathing festivals, especially the annual Magha Mela at Prayagraj, a city revered for its spot at the confluence of 3 holy rivers, the Ganga, the Yamuna, and the mythical Saraswati. But the most vivid early account doesn't come from a Hindu text, but from the journal of a foreign traveler. In the 7th century, the Chinese monk Xuanzang journeyed across India. During the reign of the great king Harsha, Xuanzang witnessed a massive festival at Prayag. He described the king every 5 years, giving away vast treasures, gold, jewels, and silks, to the hundreds of thousands of ascetics, scholars, and poor pilgrims who had gathered. This wasn't some fledgling event. It was already an ancient, respected, and enormous tradition. It was a river of humanity that had been flowing for centuries, carving its path through the landscape of India. Empires would rise and fall along its banks, like temporary dams that couldn't hope to stop the current, but the river itself just kept flowing. Forging a spiritual army. For centuries, the pilgrimage was a mostly decentralized affair, like countless scattered streams trickling across the land. But in the 8th century, a philosopher-saint named Adi Shankaracharya would change everything. Shankaracharya was a monumental figure, a visionary who traveled the length and breadth of India to revive and unify Hindu thought. He saw the immense spiritual energy of these great gatherings and understood their potential. Tradition credits him with organizing and formalizing the Mela. He was like a great spiritual engineer who didn't dig the riverbed, but built strong banks, guiding these scattered streams into a single, mighty river. He established a network of monasteries and brought together sadhus, holy men and ascetics, from countless different sects for religious debates and shared rituals. Most importantly, he's said to have organized the akharas, monastic orders of ascetics, some of whom were warrior monks. These akharas became the guardians of the tradition, the marshals of the Mela, leading the processions and the sacred bathing rituals. Shankaracharya didn't create the pilgrimage, but he gave it a spine. He helped transform a spontaneous tide of faith into an organized institution, a spiritual army whose ranks would swell into the millions. This new structure would give the Mela the resilience to not just survive the turbulent centuries ahead, but to thrive in them. The warrior monks and the coming storm. Throughout the medieval period, the Kumbh Mela grew into a cornerstone of Hindu life. Emperors and local kings supported the festival, recognizing its power to foster a shared identity. The grandest ritual of the Mela, the Shahi Snan, or royal bath, saw the akharas leading massive processions into the sacred waters, a spectacular display of spiritual authority. But this authority wasn't always peaceful. The akharas were not just scholars. They were fierce, militant orders, carrying both scripture and sword. Clashes between different sects of these warrior monks over who had the right to bathe first were not uncommon. A particularly violent clash in Haridwar in 1796 resulted in hundreds of deaths and caught the attention of a new, formidable power, consolidating its grip on the subcontinent, the British East India Company. The British, always wary of large native gatherings, saw not a festival of faith, but a powder keg of rebellion and disorder. This river of humanity was on a collision course with the most powerful empire on earth. This unstoppable force was about to meet an object that considered itself immovable. But how does an empire, with all its armies and laws, control a belief? To see how this pilgrimage would challenge the very foundations of colonial rule, make sure you're subscribed and have hit the bell icon. You won't want to miss what happens next. An unstoppable force, the British Empire's first approach to the Kumbh Mela was one of suspicion and suppression. It was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a picket fence. They hit pilgrims with taxes without providing any services, and saw the massive, chaotic gathering as a threat to public order and a hotbed for dissent. But they were about to learn a lesson in power that couldn't be taught on a battlefield. After the Great Indian Rebellion of 1857, the British Crown took direct control of India, and their strategy shifted. They realized they couldn't just crush Indian traditions with brute force. That would be like trying to smother a wildfire, which only causes it to leap and spread. They had to control them, manage them, and where possible, co-opt them. The Kumbh Mela became the ultimate test of this new doctrine. It was a test the empire failed, or rather, a test the pilgrimage passed. The sheer scale of the Mela was something the colonial administration simply couldn't handle. They couldn't ban it. The backlash would be catastrophic. They couldn't ignore it. The risk of disease and stampedes was too great. So the empire's entire philosophy of dominance shattered. Not its armies or its government, but its strategy broke apart against the sheer immovable weight of the Mela. Powerless to stop the flow, the British were forced to bend. They had to intervene not to stop the Mela, but to enable it. Starting with the Prayagraj Kumbh of 1870, colonial authorities began to actively organize the event. They built roads, set up sanitation, managed the crowds, and negotiated with the akharas to prevent clashes. They surveyed the land, documented the rituals, and, in doing so, accidentally legitimized and formalized the Kumbh Mela as a singular monumental event. An empire built on conquest was forced to become an event manager for a religious festival it fundamentally distrusted. The pilgrimage hadn't raised an army against the British, but it had defeated their strategy of control simply by being too large, too ancient, and too important to the people of India. The empire of faith. Empires are fleeting. The Mughal Empire, in all its glory, faded into history. The British Empire, on which the sun never set, eventually saw its own twilight. They are like sandcastles built on the shore, magnificent for a time, but destined to be washed away by the tide. The Kumbh Mela, however, was the tide itself. In the 20th century, the pilgrimage that had once been a site of colonial management became a platform for the independence movement. After independence, the Indian government, unlike the British, embraced them and the law, pouring resources into infrastructure to support the ever-growing crowds. Today, its scale is hard to wrap your head around. The 2019 Mela at Prayagraj drew an estimated 240 million people over 2 months. The Maha Kumbh of 2025 is projected to attract over 400 million, a gathering of humanity with no parallel on Earth. In 2017, UNESCO recognized it as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity, a treasure belonging not just to India, but to the world. The journey that began with a mythical drop of nectar became a river of people that no earthly power could dam. It didn't need to fight empires, it simply outlasted them. It proved that the most enduring kingdom isn't one of land or armies, but of faith. The path to immortality, it turns out, was indeed a journey, one that created an empire of its own, an empire of faith that continues to rise long after the thrones of its rivals have crumbled to dust.